All right. Well, hey, good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us today. There's a nice crowd out there virtually. I'm Yuman Sang. I'm the CEO at Turn Zero, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar. It's titled "How to Use Sales and Marketing Data to Create a Connected Customer Experience." Before we get started, just some housekeeping. I'd like to remind you that we are recording this session, and we'll send out to everybody who signed up a link to the recording 24 hours after the webinar. Now, throughout this webinar, please submit any questions you have. We actually allotted a bunch of time for Q&A. There is a questions box, and so go ahead and put it in there. If it's technical in nature, we have a team ready to answer them. Otherwise, we will try to pull the questions and answer them during the Q&A portion of this webinar. Well, now I'm really pleased to introduce you to today's presenter, Henry Schuck. Henry's the CEO of Discover.org and ZoomInfo. It's a combined organization with $350 million of recurring revenue and 1,000 employees across the globe. Schuck founded Discover.org in 2007 in his law school apartment, and since then, the company has undergone 5 mergers and acquisitions and is currently backed by the Carlyle Group and TA Associates. Now, ZoomInfo and Discover.org also filed a S1 with the SEC with the intention of hitting the public market. That is a rare and major milestone. I'm really excited for you and your team. And best of luck on that process. I know it's not an easy one. We need some good news right now, and I'm definitely rooting you on. So today, Henry's going to talk to us about how customer success organizations can up their data game to create a more connected customer experience to drive better outcomes and customer retention. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Henry. Thanks for joining us today.
Perfect. Thanks, Yuman. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm excited to walk through some of the thoughts that we have around using data and customer success, different areas that you can use it. But at its core, I think what we want to get across is we really believe that customer success teams must rely on key and connected data to insightfully map and optimize the customer journey, understand the complete relationship and purchasing landscape of their customers, to be able to leverage real-time intelligence to identify and deploy ABM strategies that drive expansion opportunities, and they can use this data to insightfully develop a firmographic scoring model to mitigate churn and identify opportunity across the customer base. What we're hopeful for is, and what Yuman and I talked about before we as we were planning this webinar, was let's make sure that we give sort of tactical takeaways throughout this that give little snippets of advice that you can take back today and start implementing. And so we're hopeful that we've scattered that throughout today's presentation, and then we wanted to give a good amount of time at the end to allow you all to ask questions. And so you can ask questions there's a questions panel in GoToWebinar, and we're going to get through as many of those as we can. Okay. So the first place Henry, I wanted to start.
Henry, sorry to interrupt. Your slides you're blank. I see a white screen.
Oh, that's not good.
Maybe on a wrong screen or something. Thanks.
Yeah, give me a second. Okay, let me just try to share in a different way.
It's good. It's for me, it's mid-sized. The Zoom. All right,
I'm gonna switch it to just.
There we go.
1 second. I'm gonna do this. How about now?
Yep, that works. You're good.
You can see the whole. You see the screen. Okay, great. And thank you for that, Yuman. And you can see this slide too, the customer journey.
Yes. Now I see both your screens.
I can't win. You see both my screens.
Yeah, you probably have multiple screens. I know I do as well.
Let me try that. How about now? Oh, it's turning.
I still see both your screens, Henry. There it is. Okay, that works.
Now, what are you?
I see the customer journey map.
Perfect.
Yep.
Great.
Okay. There you go.
So this is a slide that most of you, I'm sure all of you, are familiar with and think about a lot. How are we talking to our customers, from landing them to getting them to adopt and engage, to expanding and retaining them. And this is, a pretty important slide as you're thinking about how you engage with your customers, But the way that I often think about this slide is, where are the places in each of these stages where having data on the company, on the prospect, on the tech stack, on the projects and initiatives that a company is doing, on their user data, where can we use that data to impact this journey? And so first, you might be looking at the land side of this. You might be looking at the land side of this customer journey and thinking, oh, well, we're in customer success, so the land side doesn't really matter all that much to us. But let's take a step back, and for me, I think about what are the pieces of data on the land side that can make the process better for me. So for us at ZoomInfo, one of the things that happens during onboarding is that there's a technical integration where we integrate ZoomInfo systems with your CRM systems, your marketing automation systems, whether it's Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics or Marketo or Eloqua. One of the key functionalities that we bring is the ability to connect those systems, sync them, and then keep data aligned and refreshed. Now, if I'm looking at the pipeline of opportunities that's going on in the new business land, then I see a bunch of Salesforce customers who are coming through, and the pipeline is now stuffed with Salesforce customers. Then I know that when they get across to adopt and engage, like in the next 30 days, I know that I'm going to have a heavy lift around Salesforce engagement or Salesforce integration. And so how am I thinking about the resources that I have set up for that onboarding experience to make sure that that's as seamless as possible? Or one of the things that we do is we enrich every lead and every opportunity with technographics. And so as a lead is progressing through the sales cycle, we know what technologies they're currently using. Again, are they Salesforce or Marketo Shop? Are they using what webinar software are they using? What are they using? Zoom or GoToMeeting? Are they using Fuse phones or Ring Central? We know all of that information, and depending on your solution and your product or service, that information can make for a much more engaging and personalized adoption and engagement session for them. So they come over, I already know, hey, this customer uses Ring Central. Our solution it integrates with Ring Central. I'm gonna make sure that my learning managers, my CSMs, my account managers, they're armed with that information so that when they come into their first call, once they become a customer, we're having a much more engaging conversation. I know your landscape. I understand what technologies you currently use. I can really make that experience much more personalized for you. And then really, one of the things that we think a lot about here is how do we make, and I'm going to talk about how we do it in a couple of slides, but how do we take data every step of this way and then automate out the engagement motions to our customers? And so if in the adopt and engage section of the customer journey, we think a lot about usage data. How are customers engaging with our platform? How often are they logging in? What actions are they taking when they log in? We think a lot about support tickets. Are they writing support tickets? Have they experienced a bug that we're trying to resolve? And we collect all of that information inside of Salesforce, and then we work on ways to automate out the customer success or account manager where we can be personalized and specific to our customers without using the limited resources of our account managers and our customer success managers. We try to do that. So for example, one of the things that we've done is if a customer comes into support and they flag a bug, they say, hey, I'm trying to do this download of data, and every time that I do it, I get an error message. If that becomes a bug, we record which customer told us about it. The record of that gets linked to a Jira ticket, and when that bug is completed or fixed and pushed to production, an automated email goes out to the customer that says, hey, thanks for telling us about this bug. We've resolved it, and we've given you 250 data credits for letting us know. And if you think about what automation does for you in that moment, Number one, you're taking data that you're already creating. The support team is already writing a ticket. They already know which customers complaining about this. The engineering team is already solving the bug. They're already closing the ticket. And if we're able to link those things together and come back to the customer every time one of these reported things happens, they feel like a part of our company. And so we think a lot about how do you take data in every step of this way, house it, and then automate a motion around it. So in the land piece, let's say I know they use Salesforce. I want to automate what I'm sending them. Hey, I know they're a Salesforce customer and a Marketo customer. So even before they sit down with our customer success manager, I'm sending them in an automated way the guide around what they need to do to integrate Salesforce, what they need to do to integrate Marketo. And throughout this entire process, we want to be thinking about what data we can bring to bear that makes their interactions with us more personalized, and also that allows us to automate some part of the outreach and connection with the customer out of the account manager's ad hoc time. The other piece that inside of adopt and engage and expand and retain is you want to know in as granular of a way who your customers are, and that's more than at the foundational level. How big are they? What technologies do they use? What industries are they in? What's their revenue? Where are they located? And as you start adding all of these key firmographic elements, what we've been able to do is really understand which of our customers are most likely to expand with us. So if we're looking at all of our customers and we see, oh, look at this cohort of customers, 1,000+ employees in software located in the United States, where we have a VP level point of contact, those accounts grow the fastest with us. That allows us to allocate our resources in the best way around expansion. And so much of the work we do in account management and customer success is around resource allocation. We have limited resources, and we're trying to make sure that those resources are spending their time on the highest value places. And having a lot of data that tells you Salesforce customers of this size in this region are growing the fastest allows us to deploy resources in the most efficient way. A couple of key places where you can use data, or where data or key pieces of data that you can use. An organizational chart. And this one's pretty simple, and really your best enterprise reps, your best account managers are doing this intuitively. They're creating org charts to understand who their point of contact reports to, who their colleagues are, where the opportunity is in this account. And as you're thinking about expanding outside of your sort of core offering or outside of where you landed, understanding sort of the other decision makers around the company and how the org chart looks within those other organizations is incredibly valuable. For us, this is an interesting example because we usually sell into sales or marketing. And we sell into those organizations, and then we have a real opportunity to expand from those organizations. Well, and the expansion is a little bit more complicated because now we're selling into product marketing, or we're selling into finance and accounts receivable, or we're selling into marketing operations or sales operations. And if we landed the VP of sales or the VP of marketing, we often don't have visibility below. We don't have visibility across. And so having an org chart and getting into a habit of really understanding those other key people in an organization where your product or your service solves a problem for them is a key part of expanding those accounts. And so, inside of ZoomInfo, we provide an organizational chart for accounts. Inside of Salesforce, if you're using Salesforce as a CRM, or really any CRM, there's a reports to functionality where you can say, hey, Joe reports to this person, or this person reports to that person. And so having that hierarchical view is really important in understanding who the decision makers are. This is also a place where aligning with someone in product marketing or someone in sales is really important, because as an account manager or a customer success manager, I'm focused on how do I make this company adopt our solutions? And then a lot of our time is spent on how do I make sure the account renews and how do I make sure the account expands? And if we're thinking about the expansion part of this equation, then I'm thinking about what other problems does my solution solve for a company that we didn't land into. And then I want to go and talk to those decision makers around the company to be able to say, hey, John, we're working with your VP of sales and your sales org. They're getting a lot of success out of ZoomInfo. What I wanted to talk to you about is how accounts receivable teams are also using our platform to increase time to payment, to increase their ability to connect with the accounts payable departments of their companies. And so, you know, making that leap is really important. Having a really good relationship with product marketing and sales enablement, and in a smaller company, the CEO or the VP of sales, to be able to bring that type of insight to your account manager so they know how to have those conversations is sort of the first step in this process. And then knowing where to point my resources across the organization to look for those expansion opportunities is the sort of the second most important piece. And the org chart really plays a critical part there. Now, depending on like the level of sophistication of your account management and your CS org, how much data you're collecting in an automated way varies. Some companies we talk to collect everything in an automated way. If I call somebody, that gets connected. If I send an email, that gets collected. If there's a support ticket, that gets collected. If somebody sneezes at their desk, that gets collected. And so there's a spectrum of data that you can and should be collecting. So I just wouldn't be too, you know, if you're looking at this and you're intimidated, like, oh my goodness, like there's a lot of this data and we're not collecting anything today. Like, don't worry, that is the much more standard than collecting everything. But one of the key pieces of information that we collect is communications with our end customers. And so when we're collecting how many emails we're sending, how many people we're engaged with, how often are we increasing momentum within the account? Are we decreasing momentum? How many meetings have we had? How many people are we talking to on a regular basis within the account? And all of that is interesting, but it's really not valuable until you're doing something tactically with it. And so the key for all of this is like, I wouldn't, you know, you can start by, the way that I would go about starting this is to think like, what's a key piece of information that if I collected, I have a tactic to connect to. So for us, what if I was able to connect all of the information around how much we're talking with our customers? And if I can collect every interaction we have with them, and we collect this through our tool called Inbox AI, but there are a lot of ways to do this. But if I collect all of that information, then can I take a look at that and say, anytime an account is decreasing in its amount of communication with us, then do X, Y, or Z. So I want to build a playbook from the data that I want to work backwards. Do I have a tactic that I can deploy if I had the data to support that tactic? And then I want to go collect that data. So for us, we're collecting all of this email history, contact information, and meeting history, and then we're driving tactics downstream against that. And you know, one of the unique things about for all of us who play in the B2B space is that the world is changing in an incredibly dynamic way. And what I often like to think about is the difference between consumer data and business data. If you think about me as a consumer, I've had the same email address, same consumer email address for the last 20 years. I've had the same cell phone number for the last 20 years. But in the last 20 years, my professional history, the companies that I've worked at, the titles that I've had, the email addresses, phone numbers, you know, the size of the companies I've worked for, the tech stacks of the companies I've worked for, those are constantly changing. And so because of that, it's very hard to keep your systems up to date and accurate and then make insightful moves on this. The world is constantly changing. Companies are growing, companies are shrinking, they're getting funding, they're getting acquired, they're bringing in new executives, they're changing their emails. They no longer have a desk phone, now they have a mobile phone. Some companies are laying people off, some companies are hiring people. Emails are bouncing, people are getting promotions. And it's very hard to stay on top of that information at scale, and staying on top of that information as it relates to your customers can drive an incredible amount of insight inside of your business. And when we think about that, the easiest place to start with that is, has my champion left? Has my champion gotten a new boss? Or has the company that I'm selling to got funding or been acquired? So imagine your champion leaves. That is either an opportunity or a threat for your business. Maybe your champion wasn't engaging with you that much, and so now you have a new opportunity to engage with a new decision maker. Or maybe your champion was an incredible advocate for you inside of the organization. Now they're gone. That's a threat. We need to rebuild our relationship with the new person who's come in. And by the way, if we're really good, we want to know where that champion went, so we can feed that back into the land part of the equation and make sure our sales reps are going after them again in their new organization. Now, many of you, because I used to do this often, I would look at this and I'd go like, yeah, we're doing this. Yeah, we're doing this. But we weren't really doing it. You had a couple reps who were really, really good who were doing it, and it became incumbent on us to actually build systems that made sure this was happening regularly. You had a data feed that came in that told you, hey, these champions have left. There's a new CMO at these accounts that you're focused on that are your customers. There's a new CEO at this account. This account just got funding. And then we built out specific programs and actions that take place, a playbook that takes place immediately after we saw that level of activity. And Yuman, it would be great here if you have sort of best practices that you've seen your customers at Turn Zero really deploy using this type of data.
Yeah, I speak to a lot of CS groups, and this is the single scariest thing that happens with CS folks, right? And sometimes, if the champion is not a great champion, then it's an opportunity, like you say. But this is one of these events where you spend all this time building up a relationship, building up goodwill, and through no fault of your own, it's over. So to your point, Henry, like having the data to get ahead of this is really important, but then what you do with it is even more important. So, we have a lot of folks who this is one of the plays that they really focus on. And so if there's a key decision maker that has changed, some folks, it was a high touch model, it triggers tasks to do, phone calls to make, meetings to schedule, right? Those are, basically assigned to AEs or to the CSMs. Others that are like more high velocity businesses, right, where you're managing a lot of clients, it's all automated. Maybe you send a welcome email, welcome kit. Some of our clients even send packages, right? So, you get something in the mail, which may be harder to do these days, but it's just like, hey, welcome to your new company. This is what we do. Here's the last QBR report, so I can get you up to speed, right away. Maybe here's some swag even. So I've seen a lot of different plays that can happen, but I think it's most important that you get the data one, and then you do something really interesting with it as quickly as you can.
Yep.
So we can certainly talk more about it, but those are just some of the things I've seen.
Yeah, I think you pipe the data in, you build a process and a system that allows you to track and metric what you're doing with that data, and then allows you to see if it works. If that, it's expensive to send swag and a package every time a new champion shows up at your company, but if that increases the renewal rate of those clients, 15%, 20%, 5%, depending on your business, then it could be really worth it. But if it doesn't change it at all, then it's not, and you shouldn't do it. And I think it's incumbent on us to make sure that when we run these types of programs, that we do build the infrastructure to be able to test the efficacy of them. Because if we're not doing that, then, at some point, the situation I never want to be in personally, or I never want my executives to be in either, is them telling me something that makes sense, makes common sense, but not having any data to really prove whether it actually makes business sense. So I always want to be in a position to say, look, I think we should do this. And by the way, here's all the data where we've experimented with this that shows you why we should, invest more in this. And to the extent that we can be data driven like that with our decisions, the less sort of like emotional pull it takes on, like, oh, well, this is just one of Henry's ideas again. You want to be supported with data that allows you to sort of be agnostic around your opinions. So I wanted to talk a second here about account-based campaigns and how you use data along the way to do account-based campaigns to your audiences and to your customers. And so first, obviously, data is going to help with your account selection. And you want to be able to be really, really granular. You want to be able to be really granular here, from tech stack to funding to growth rate to location to number of locations to number of salespeople or number of marketers. There are all these really interesting data pieces that are data elements that are available to you that you can use to be really specific about the accounts you run an ABM strategy against. You want tactical implementation. So, how am I orchestrating a multi-touch, multi-channel playbook across those accounts? And then how am I configuring our systems to be able to see these motions in action and be really nimble about how we're making spending decisions for them? This is ours. This is how we think about this. And by the way, if I go back for 1 second, account selection in its best form combines both readily available data elements that like ZoomInfo could provide you with some of your internal elements. So whether it's product usage or number of touches you've had with them. So if you're able to combine those two things together, that's where things get really powerful. But often, one without the other is still directionally accurate and allows you to get a lift. So for us, we think first about grouping accounts for action. And so how do we group these accounts? Who are they? Do we group them by size and industry and tech stack and usage and level of engagement from VPs? How are you grouping these accounts into buckets that make most sense for you? You can be highly technical in this, or you can take measured guesses. You've seen enough 500 employee software startups with $10 million in funding expand. Great. Who are all of those in our customer universe? I always want to have prescriptive action. And so based on something that we've decided, we're going to prescribe action to our individual contributors or CSMs and account managers to do. And then we're going to have systems in place that tell us they've done that. And then we're going to see if those things that they've done have led to outcomes that we desired. And then we're going to run, we're going to have a baseline to see how those outcomes compare to other motions. And we're going to be able to report all of it. And so this is how we think of the world. Can I group accounts based on something specific, some specific action? So for example, here, if we're thinking about product data, let's say that in our cohort of 250 to 500 employee customers who've integrated with Salesforce, we expect users to log in at least once a week. And in the accounts where they're not logging in at least once a week, we're going to lay out really prescriptive action that we expect our account managers and CSMs to do. And then we're going to have a feedback loop to know that they've done those actions. And then we're going to be able to track those actions to outcomes. And then we're going to be able to compare them and report against them. So that's sort of the 360-degree view of that. For us, then you want to coordinate these campaigns. You want to be able to coordinate email marketing with web personalization, with direct mail and AdWords and Facebook ads, to SDR plays and content syndication and display ads. Now, again, like if you asked me to do, to be fair, if I was sitting at this webinar 3 years from now, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. I can't. How am I going to integrate all of this? So think of this more like your North Star, not what you need to get off this webinar and go figure out. If you're not coordinating email marketing and direct mail, you should probably do that. Pick a couple of these that are easy to coordinate and then do work to coordinate them. Obviously, email marketing, if you're not coordinating email marketing with SDR plays, that's just probably malfeasance that you need to figure out. You shouldn't be sending an email to the same people your SDRs are calling, both of you with different messages. And so you just want to make sure, to the extent you can start linking these things together, so there is true coordination, that you do, and then know that someplace in the future they'll all link together for you. You can hyper personalize. I think so much, actually, it's really interesting. Since, if you look at the world in sort of pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, we've actually seen inbound emails more than triple across our company. So sales emails, customer emails, they've more than tripled across our company. And so being able to be hyper personalized with your outreach is going to become more and more and more important. And so we recommend that you use things like executive changes, funding rounds, product launches, competitive intelligence around what a competitor is doing, what a company's spending money on, to be able to do really specific outreach at the right time with the right message. This is like an example here. Instacart has a $244 million marketing budget. And they just hired a new chief marketing officer. And so we know that new hires newly hired execs spend 70% of their budget in the first 3 months of their role. And so you want to get in front of this person now. And so you want, building motions around this type of real-time intelligence is incredibly important. A lot of you probably sell a technology that can be identified by looking at the code on the website. So in order to get the full value of Marketo, I need to put a Marketo munchkin somewhere in my website, on my website. Well, if I'm a Marketo sales rep, then knowing that a customer has put an Acton snippet or a HubSpot snippet or an Eloqua snippet also on their website, that should trigger a play for me, probably a really important one. Probably indicates either I'm about to lose the account or I'm in a trial with the account. And so thinking of places where that type of digital data and fingerprint lives that can drive emotion for me from a customer success perspective, also incredibly important. And I think we spend a lot of time thinking about the four corners of our website, right? We know everything. If you're sort of set up your systems right, you know everything about what your customers are doing on your website. Or if it's a SaaS product, what they're doing inside of the SaaS product. What are they reading on the website? Do they go to the pricing page? Do they go to the resources page? What things are they looking at? And so, but it's all trapped inside of the four corners of our website. And most customers are not doing all of their research on your solution on your website. I think they recognize that to some degree, that's a biased view of the market. And so they go outside of your website and they do a bunch of research on topics that are related to you, and you don't have any visibility into that. And so one of the things that we actually rolled out years ago was the ability to use intent data to drive these types of motions. And intent data is really it's really looking at what companies are doing on the business to business web outside of the four corners of your website. And so let's say you sell an API management solution. You can track your 500 customers and get an alert anytime those customers increase significantly their consumption of API management topics across the business to business web. Maybe they're reading an article on CIO.com or on the Wall Street Journal or in some other publication that's industry specific. You don't get to see all of that, but if you subscribe to buying intent signals, you can see that and you can build motions out of it. Like if I'm a CSM or account manager, I want to know if my customers are increasing consumption on topics that are related to the solutions that we sell, because those are the times I want to engage. And so a lot of that motion is very similar to a sales motion. And then finally here, before we go to Q&A, health scoring models that we're all thinking about to mitigate churn and identify opportunity have to be at the foundational level. You need great firmographic, great technographic, great behavioral information to really be able to do this in a proper way. If I just took my, and I'm sure everybody feels this way, if I just took my CRM data and said like, hey, let's build models around it, and try to understand which companies are going to do what when, you're really limited, because basically you probably have your product data and you probably have your website data, but not having an ongoing understanding of what your customers look and feel like from a size perspective, from a location perspective, from a technographic perspective, from a funding perspective. Not knowing that it puts you at a terrific disadvantage to your competition. And really, like I outlined a little bit earlier, the difficult part of this is that it's changing all the time. The customers you signed at the beginning of the year look very different. 100% of the time, they look very different than how they look at the end of the year. It's just like a universal truth that we have to like understand. They're going to hire new employees. They're going to grow. New executives are going to come in. They're going to use new technologies. Very few organizations look exactly the same on December 31st as they did on January 1st of the prior year. And so having, you know, the demographics and firmographics of that company changing along the way and having visibility into that at any point in time as you're building segmentation models or trying to understand why your enterprise customers who use Microsoft Dynamics don't engage with the platform so much or aren't calling you as often. Those are really key elements that we should all be layering into the way we think about our customers, because it gives us a much fuller view of who they are, the potentiality to churn, the potentiality to grow or fall off. Whether a great usage, great usage in the mid-market doesn't look the same as great usage in the enterprise, and great usage in the SMB doesn't look like great usage in the mid-market. And maybe customers who use a specific piece of your product who are in the mid-market churn at a higher rate. So being able to bring that type of data to bear in the way we think about our customers is also an incredibly valuable part of the journey we're all on. And I think with that, I'd love to open up to questions.
Yeah, well, hey, thank you, Henry. Please go ahead and submit your questions in the questions box. And one thing I actually would like to add, that was really a lot of great information, really insightful. I do want to actually talk to folks on the team who are CS folks, right? So there's a combination of customer marketing on this call, some folks in marketing, some folks Square and customer success. The one thing I would advise customer success teams to think about is, your seeing folks are getting this data. They need it, they want it. It's just budget. They're going to be working with a Zoom Info. They're going to be working with one of Zoom Info's to get this information. It's really important for them to do their jobs well. You should piggyback on that. You need that data as well. Do not forsake that data. If that data is already entering the CRM from a different source, but being budgeted by someone else, take advantage of it. And let me give you an example. One recent example where this was really helpful for many of our customers. So when COVID hit, I know a lot of CS teams, if you didn't have industry data, if you didn't have employee data, you were at a disadvantage. You couldn't segment your customer base to say, hey, show me all the folks in travel and hospitality, that right now, so I can actually service them a different way. Or, show me all my SMB or micro businesses right now, so I know they're in trouble. So these are things that having this data is really important, and you can take advantage of it now because it's very likely that your sales and marketing team will be investing in it. And then once you do that, if you're using a CS platform like ChurnZero, the health scores are there for you, the integration of all the different pieces of data, and you can run all those plays that Henry's been talking about to take advantage of this data. So I just want to make sure that it's probably already there. And if it's not there, I would say push that team to go forward. All right, I do have a few questions. Henry, let me. So, the org chart is really important, right? And I think a lot of CS folks are naturally inclined to sort of explore the org chart. But we do have a lot of folks on the line that are more high velocity businesses, right? So your CSM, you own 100, 200 accounts. You may not have the time to explore, the org chart. Any techniques, for that type of team to use that information in their data?
Yeah. So what I would say in those types of situations, the key that I would say is you really want to understand who your buyer personas are from an expansion perspective, who your buyer personas are outside of the current where you've landed. So like, let's say I sell into sales, but I have additional opportunity with a VP of product marketing and a manager of accounts receivable. And if I can pinpoint really specific buyer profiles there, then I can do something that's a little bit more broad-based in my outreach. I can run campaigns that don't, really rely on me looking through the org chart, but I can say, give me the universe of product marketing VPs and managers of accounts receivable at my existing accounts, and then let me run campaigns against them. In a coordinated, much more sort of like a broader way. That's what I would recommend.
All right, that's great. Another issue is data overload. And I've seen a lot of people's CRMs, I've seen a lot of people's systems, even in Turn Zero. There's a lot of data. There's a ton of data, and at some points it can be overwhelming. Let's say, I'm starting to feed more data into our systems. In your experience, what pieces of data are most important first? If I had to step into it slowly, what kind of customer profile information would you recommend that we put into our system?
Yeah, so I would say, look, you got to know size of the company. You got to know industry or type of company. Those are musts to have, and you can use either number of employees or revenue as the key indication for size. I would say for most companies, using number of employees is a much better metric because many private companies just don't disclose their revenue. And so, but they'd be happy to tell you, hey, we have 400 employees. So know the size, know the industry. And then I would say the next piece is know who you're engaged with across the organization. So are you engaged are you engaged at the director level, the VP level, the manager level? In accounts where you're engaged with the VP level, do those renew and expand at a higher rate than when you're engaged with a director level or a manager level? Maybe the answer to that is no. And so the VP doesn't matter. And then you don't have to spend a bunch of resources like yanking a VP into the process for you. So, but I think knowing the type of people you're connected with, the size of the company, the industry, that's probably where I would begin.
And I would agree with you 100%. Yeah.
I also wouldn't add anything that you don't have an immediate sort of tactical use for. Like we don't need a ton of data inside of this system. We need the key pieces of data that drive emotion. And so I just stay really focused on, am I adding this to drive emotion?
All right, another question from Ryan. So we just talked about quantity of data. Let's talk about speed. How important is real time when it comes to taking action on data? How much more valuable do you consider real-time data to be than, say, a 24-hour-old data or week-old data?
Yeah, I don't think real-time data, it doesn't have to be like up to the second information in this scenario. I mean, you could be being 24 hours, 48 hours, even a week kind of behind the changes is not gonna it's not gonna materially deteriorate your engagement play You just want to have a system to capture it whenever it's going to be captured. Like if you want to run your play 1 week after the data comes in, that's fine. Just know you're going to be 1 week after.
I agree. There's also a bunch of questions that are specific about how to do something on the Zoom Info platform, I'm going to pipe those over sort of on the side, and we'll connect you offline one-on-one with somebody from the Zoom Info team. I do have another question. So you talked a bit about account-based marketing, ABM. That's a very hot topic in the marketing world. The CSM doesn't know what that really means. So what are some key tactics that you think you can learn from ABMers? And let me add, by the way, I actually would say that CS folks are the original ABMers, right? But I'll leave that. I'll pop that question over to you. You know, are there best practices from marketers employing ABMs that you would say, let's go ahead and push that over to CS as well?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that from an ABM perspective that we do is when we're expanding into the enterprise, into an enterprise account, we're coordinated around, well, let me say a couple things. One, we have CSMs, and then we have what we call associate CSMs. Those associate CSMs are essentially the equivalent of sales development reps within the account management and CS function. And so they will run like outbound plays at an existing customer to set appointments for the account manager to be able to sell into. And then, so when we coordinate a campaign from an ABM perspective, it kind of looks like we're running a play with the associate CSM to be calling into the account. We're doing ad retargeting against the specific account on the ad networks. We're doing an email campaign through our demand generation organization to specific buyers that is very personalized and has an offer. And as customers log into the platform, we're also presenting them with an offer as they enter the platform. And so we're trying to coordinate sort of across the demand gen account management universe to make sure the message comes from a variety of different places.
All right, let me have more questions. If you have any final questions on the audience, please put them in the questions box now. I'm going to ask you a question that I get a lot. You know, people are always concerned about how dirty their data is, right? You know, old, sporadic, you know, not updated well, either by humans or by technology. And that gives them a lot of pause to invest in technology, invest in systems. You know, if I were to say that to you, you know, my system is dirty, you know, why would I pour more data into it? What would you say to me?
Well, first I'd say, wow, I've never heard that CRM data is not great before. Actually, every single customer that I've ever interacted with has said the same thing. The data in my CRM is not up to date, it's not accurate, it's unusual, it's unique, we set it up in this weird way. And I would just say, like, at a high level, those are just problems you need to solve. Like, we're all in this every day to try to solve problems throughout our organization. This is one we need to start figuring out ways to solve. Is there a silver bullet to this problem? No, there just is not. Like, you know, for us, we believe we provide the most accurate data set available, but it's across 100 million people and 15 million companies. You can find wrong data in our system all the time. But we're striving to be, you know, we set a benchmark to be 95% accurate, and then you just got to get comfortable that 5% of the time it's going to be 100% inaccurate. And that is the price to play to be 95% accurate. But if you go searching for something that's 100% accurate, you will never get anything done. It is just as simple as that. So if you want to do nothing, search for the solution that gets 100% with no fallout. If you want to start moving forward, which I think is incredibly important, you know, you want to take a step and then another step and another step, then you need to get comfortable with some certain level of inaccuracy or mess in your CRM system, and then start moving the ball forward.
I'm with you 100%, Henry. And by the way, if any one of us in this universe gets to 100% beautiful data somehow, the next day it's not going to be 100% anymore.
That's exactly right.
It's never ending. Hey, one final question that I'm actually going to start to answer, and I'll pass it over to you to elaborate on. It's from Tanya. Tanya asks, are there examples of customer health metrics that you use to come up with an overall score? And then how do you reduce subjective metrics like, you know, a CSM, so, you know, temperature check? So let me start and then I'll tell you what we tell customers, and Henry, please chime in. So we see this as really we think a great health score really is a combination of subjective measures and objective measures. So objective measures that that you can't argue with would be, are they using your product or service, right? So product usage, so you can't argue with that. It's either happening or not. And it's, the key people using it, are the rank and file using it, however, whatever's important to you, that's an important metric to put into a health score. Another one would be even conversations. Henry spoke about this. Are they responding to your emails? Are they going to the meetings with you? Are they taking your trainings? All these sort of these engagement metrics, not with the product, but with the rest of your company. Is that happening? I think that's important. I believe these are objective measures that are important. On the subjective side, I actually don't think take away CSM sentiment, right? So if the CSM said, hey, I just had a great call, they're really happy, they're going to give it, they give it a green light, use it. Don't depend on it, but it certainly should be part of the score. And then the last thing on the subjective side, right? So you have the CSM being subjective, but you also want to survey your customers. NPS is probably the easiest way, and take the NPS survey and whatever the folks say, put that into the score itself, right? And so it's a really nice combination of objective measures, subjective measures. Tools like TurnZero can help you do all that, but that's what we recommend to our customers. Add something to that.
Yeah, I would just add, one of the things that we started doing a couple years ago was, when an account executive would close a deal, we would ask them in Salesforce, how likely is this customer to be how likely is this customer to be tremendously successful with ZoomInfo? And they'd give a rank on a 1 to 5 scale. And that was fine, but what we really needed was kind of a year's worth of data in order to see how good our reps were at actually predicting their success. And so along the way, you could see, were the people who we said were going to be really successful, are they using the platform often? Are they logging in a lot? Are they integrating with CRM? And at the end of the year, what you really saw was we were actually pretty darn good at knowing when a company was going to be really successful with our platform or not. And so subjective is only subjective for a certain period of time. Once you can layer in the objective metrics underneath to decide whether, how accurate those subjective metrics are.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, there's sort of how I feel about the customer, but I think what you were saying is assess the fit ahead of time, right? The salespeople was like, this is a great fit. They need us, this is the right industry, it's a great fit. And then I kind of want sheepishly, I hope this one works. Maybe that's not a good fit. So I think that's really important as well. The one thing I will add about health scores, and recently this has become a big deal, is you want to have a vibrant, quick health score. So for instance, during COVID, one of the best practices that we asked our clients to do was to create a COVID score, right? And the COVID, so your traditional health score I just described, right? They tend to be longer range. A COVID health score is, are you in the hospitality business? Are you in the travel business? What's happening now? What's happened in the last 2 weeks, right? Are people stopping using it because they're being laid off? So the health scores also have to be fit. You have your long-term, over a year, if that's how you sell, how healthy are they? And then if something weird happens, boom, stand up a very quick health score that is much narrower in time, focused on this one issue. So I think that's really important. There are some other questions as well, but we are out of time. And I think we're going to be doing a blog post with some additional Q&A on that as well. Well, hey, thank you, Henry. Really appreciate your time. I know it's a busy time for you, so thank you so much for providing your insights on all this today.
Definitely. Thank you for having me, Yuman.
All right. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for spending time with us.